Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I wanted to remind you of our Road to 1,000 subscribers giveaway that we have going on our YouTube channel. If you subscribe and have a public profile, you'll be entered to win a free RX Smart Gear original jump rope. You'll get to pick the pattern of the handles, the color and weight of the cable, and you'll be getting one of the best-selling, best-performing jump ropes out there. Every time we hit a new century mark with the number of subscribers to our channel, we'll randomly select a new winner. And our friend Dave Newman is going to throw in a little something extra for each winner. So a special thanks to our sponsor, RX Smart Gear, to Dave Newman for being such a great partner, and to you for being a loyal listener. Good luck, and I hope you are our next winner.
Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to the Clydesdale Fitness and Friends. My name is Scott Schweitzer. I am your host. I'm the Clydesdale. We like to do fitness, and these are my friends. I have my co-host, Amy Radowski, and we have a special friend today, Ellie Turner.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So we are recording this the Sunday after Wodapalooza, so a week later, and Ellie kind of burst on the scenes in the first two events of Wodapalooza by winning those, and then everybody knew her name. So what was that like to come to the States, beautiful weather, and you go out there on the first two events and you crush both of them?
Mm-hmm. It was a complete surprise. I didn't expect it at all. I actually sort of said to my coach before the competition, I was like, oh, I'm not feeling great. I don't think I'm going to, not that I had any expectations, but I just didn't think I was going to do very well. And I hadn't been feeling my usual mojo since after the game. So I was a little bit scared to compete again. And, you know, you always get those nerves. And I didn't know what to expect. So going out there, even in the first event, and coming off with a win was just a complete surprise. And then to back it up and do it again was just like, I could have never even have dreamt of doing that. It definitely gave me a sense of confidence and belief leading into the rest of the weekend. I knew there was still a long weekend to go, but it definitely sort of gave me that little bit more drive and confidence going into the next few events.
So I have a couple questions from here. One, the flip sled, brand new apparatus. Have you ever done anything like that before?
I hadn't tried the particular flip sled that we use, but I had used the pig at the games. That was the first time I touched a pig. It was at the game. So this was the second time. I did find it probably a little bit easier at Wodapalooza just because you have the handles. And I knew in the warm-up area, I saw a lot of the girls, they were sort of using one motion to try and flip the sled. They were sort of bringing it straight up to their shoulders and flipping over. But after going through a few practice runs, me and my coach decided that I was just going to, take it pretty steady, get it to my hips, get it to my shoulders, and then over, and just try and be as consistent as possible with that technique. And that felt very natural to me. I sort of felt like I got into a bit of a flow with it. And I knew that if I could just be as consistent as possible, that was going to get me the best outcome.
Yeah, I think it worked.
Well, I knew that I just had to run my own race with something like that, especially it being a new movement. Didn't really know what was going to happen or how it was going to feel like in that third and fourth round. But we knew that it was a long workout, and the minute rest can sometimes fool you and sort of make you go out a little bit harder than what you want or can hold on to. So I knew that, first, second round, get a bit of a feel for it. Don't panic too much, and then try and make your move in the third and fourth round.
Yeah. So I want to ask you overall, coming into Wodapalooza, what was the goal coming in?
The reason I did Wodapalooza was to try and get as much competition experience as I could leading into the season. I sort of started competing right at the start of 2020. My first major comp was the Australian CrossFit Championship, which was in March of 2020, which of course was right before COVID hit. So I didn't have much comp experience leading into last season. I didn't really know where I was going to rank or be at with my training. So to then make the games and that be pretty much my like third major comp, I just realized that competing is very different to training. I mean, I always knew that, but going through that experience just sort of cemented that fact that I need to get better at just the competition process of warming up, cooling down, eating around events, managing nerves, managing emotions. So heading into Wodapalooza, that was my goal, was to practice competing and practice transitions, practice staying composed and working on all those little fine details that over the weekend can add up quite significantly. And so if I look at that as a whole, I definitely got what I set out to do, which was gain that experience. I mean, I experienced winning events and being at the top of the leaderboard, and then I experienced obviously not doing as well in some events and dropping down and having to deal with that on the weekend and then go back out and still try and perform as best as I could. So that was pretty much my main goal. In saying that, you're always, I don't ever go into a competition just wanting to compete and just being okay with, whatever placing. When I compete, I do want to win. And as much as I've tried to rein that in a little bit, I can't help it. And as soon as I'm on the floor, I'm like, okay, game time. I want to win this event. And even if I know that I probably won't, it's still at the back of my mind, like that competitive mentality of wanting to do as best as I can and be the best, I guess.
Well, I think that's such an important piece too, that a lot of other non-athletes don't even think about, that it's so much more than just the training, right? The when to fuel your body and when to eat and rest appropriately during those events is such an important piece. And you can't really train that unless you're doing it in a competition style thing.
Yeah.
How did the change and delays with the weather and all that do to your vibe or your confidence and all that? How did that kind of play in there?
It was definitely tricky, and I'd never really experienced anything like that before. Just sort of the nervous anticipation, trying to keep yourself preoccupied, but also not knowing if we were going to compete, when we were going to compete, were we going to do all the events, were we going to do one of the events? Like, it was even when we got called back to the venue, it was still up in the air whether we were going to, do one of the events, just because of the safety, and it was wet, and they ended up changing a few of the components of the workout. I'm not going to lie, it was tough for me, like mentally trying to stay switched on all day, but also not switched on enough that I was going to burn out before we competed. So I guess it's just another thing to add to the toolbox of experiencing now, and next time I won't be as surprised or as shocked by it. But there's definitely things I could have done better. But in all, I think I, kept myself pretty sane all day, as best as I could for the situation that we were given.
Kind of piggybacking on this theme, you had 6 top 10 finishes out of 8 events. 2 of those were outside the top 10. What learning experience came from the 2 outside the top 10?
I think probably for me it's just like trying to pick myself up after the event, knowing that I didn't do as well as I would have liked, but then still, accepting it, feeling the emotions that come along with it, and then just getting straight back out and doing the next event as if it was your first event still. I knew that both of those were going to be difficult, so I didn't expect to win. But yeah, as I said earlier, you still want to do well, so it still hurts, but trying to pick yourself up after you've felt that sort of like devastation, you've just got to get back on with it, and you can't let it affect your next event, because then you'll be feeling those emotions again. So trying to pick up the pieces and get back out and do as well as I could in the following events. That was probably the main learning experiences from those.
Yeah, it's funny because, 6 out of 8 top 10s is really, really good. And a lot of athletes would kill to have that kind of a weekend. But all the athletes we talk to, all they can remember are the two that weren't there, right? And how do you overcome that? And how do you not let that affect the rest of your weekend? I think that's cool, because it gives you that learning experience that you can't get in training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You have a bad workout in training, and it's just that you finish the day, you go home, you recover, you move on. But when it's in competition and people are there watching and talking about it, that's when it can affect you. So I think just learning how to deal with that and moving on is great moving forward to my competition season this year.
Well, let's finish Wodapalooza with a high note. What was your favorite event and why?
I think it potentially would be the flip sled event, just because I did not expect to do well in that at all. I broke up. We went in with a bit of a conservative game plan, and we didn't really know if it was going to work or not. And so when it paid off and it was just a complete surprise, that was a pretty good feeling. I only really realized myself when I was going back to the flip sled in the last round. I was like, shit, I might do this. I'm getting close here. So that was probably my favorite, just because, I completely surprised myself. The feeling I got after the Fran event was also a highlight, just because I knew that I could do well in that event. I love to hurt, and those sorts of workouts, low skill, high hurt, is the workouts that I enjoy, or not enjoy, but I know that I can make a move on. So it wasn't, although I was still surprised to win, it wasn't as much of a surprise as that first one. I knew I could capitalize on that. But just the feeling of winning 2 in one day was just unbelievable. So, yeah. Yeah,
and you seem to love that Echo bike.
Oh, I don't know if love's the right word to use. I do love the feeling after the Echo bike of, giving your all, but when you're on there and you're looking down at the screen and it's not moving, that's not fun.
Yeah. So let's go back to, actually, I want to ask you, what have you seen as an uptick after kind of a coming out party for you? Yes, you're a games athlete from last year, but it was your rookie season. Then you come to Wodapalooza and you actually make a statement. Have you seen like a rise in like popularity on your Instagram or any of those things after this?
Yeah, there's definitely been, I guess, a little bit more interest. And I think people have a rough idea of who I am now. I think being from Australia, we are in a little bit of a bubble down there. It's a little bit harder to get recognized and popularity, but I don't do this for recognition. I do this because I love it, and it's my passion. So although I have seen a little bit of a rise afterwards, it doesn't change my effort or how I approach competitions or anything like that. So it is nice to at least have your name known at competitions now, but it doesn't really change much for me.
Yeah. And I think where it does help though is with sponsorships, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're doing this, trying to make this your career and your full-time gig, and any help with sponsorships to pay for that is a good thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%.
So let's go back in time. You grew up in Australia and in a very rural area. What was that like growing up in the country in Australia?
It was amazing. I think it's one of those things that at the time you take for granted and you don't realize how good you had it until you're sort of older and past that point, and you look back and you're like, wow, that was pretty amazing. I have 4 brothers as well, and I'm from like a fairly big family. So in country towns, pretty much the whole focus is around sport and weekend sport. And in the summer, it's like basketball and cricket. And then in the winter, it's football and netball. Probably you might not be familiar with a few of those sports that I named then, but they're big Aussie sports. So pretty much, you know, I lived for the weekends and just playing sport and being outdoors and being around the rest of the town, because the whole town and community get around each other. And, you know, after school during the week, it was a safe community. So we'd ride our bikes or walk down to the main street or to the beach and just spend time with friends. And we didn't really have to worry about safety too much, which I didn't even realize was a thing until I got older. And I was like, wow, we were very lucky and we were able to do that. So yeah, I definitely took it for granted at the time, but now looking back, it was such a great childhood. And I often think, like, if I ever did raise a family, I would like love to, you know, raise them in a country town. Just, I feel like you have a little bit more freedom and opportunities out there.
Yeah. And when I was doing research, it said that you had played basketball and netball, and I had no idea what netball was.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that no one knew what netball was here until people have asked me and I've had to explain it. But it is fairly big in Australia. It's not as, like, it's not massive, but it's a Commonwealth. It's at the Commonwealth Games. So for the Commonwealth countries, most of them would know what it is. Sort of like basketball, but a little bit like more restricted in terms of where you can go on the court.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you find CrossFit in your growing up?
So obviously I was pretty jam-packed growing up with the team sports. I tried pretty much most team sports that I had access to in the country. And then I grew up about 2 hours out of Adelaide in a town called Moonta Bay, which is by the beach. And then when I was in year 10, I went to a boarding school in Adelaide. So Adelaide's our main city in South Australia. So I went there. I continued playing team sports for the school and for a club. And then once I graduated year 12, I went to university and studied physiotherapy. And that was quite a full-on course. So for the first year, I stopped playing team sports and just dedicated myself to study. I was also trying to get into medicine at the time. So I had a lot on my plate. And I was just going to a regular gym just to, you know, keep fit and healthy, but didn't take up too much of my time and energy. But I got bored of that quite quickly. I'm very competitive. So without having that competitive edge of a team sport or anything like that, I was not very fulfilled. So a few people had recommended CrossFit to me, and I'd sort of seen a couple of like videos, and I think I'd watched maybe a documentary on Netflix. So I had a rough idea of what it was, but I wasn't heaps keen on trying it, especially doing physiotherapy. You know, people always talk that, oh, you get so injured doing CrossFit and it's so bad for your body. And so I definitely went in with a bit of a like negative mindset on it, but I was also open to trying anything because I was pretty bored with just your regular Globo gym. But my first time trying it, I didn't love it. I remember thinking like, what are we doing? We literally just use like a PVC pipe, just like a lot of standing around. And then I worked out for 10 minutes and I was used to doing a lot. So I was just, yeah, I wasn't like
10-minute workout. What's this?
Yeah. I was like, and it was very good at the time. Like the coach there made me scale it all because it was my first class. So I think they were doing like handstand push-ups and like pull-ups and things like that. And I was doing like ring rows and push-ups. So it was very like basic, which is the right way to go about it. But I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know about this. So I still had about a month left on my membership at a Globo gym. So I went back and did that for the month. But when that expired, I decided to go back and try CrossFit again. And that was about the same time as Tia had won her first games in 2017. So that was also the year that, you know, that was between Tia and Cara being two Aussies. It was quite like well known in Australia at that time. So I remember watching that and seeing just the emotion and like, yeah, it was just watching Tia win that year. From that point on, I decided like that's what I wanted to do. And pretty much from then on, I dedicated my life to being better and competing in CrossFit.
So you said you studied physiotherapy. Did you graduate with your degree?
Yeah, I was in my second year when I found CrossFit, but that was a non-negotiable for me. I knew I wanted to finish my degree, at least get it, and then decide what to do from then.
Well, it's kind of fortuitous that you went into a field that can also help you in what you're trying to do with your physical activity. So how much do you use that schooling to help you in your day-to-day?
It definitely helps a lot just in understanding the way that you can move and the muscle groups like that you're utilizing and how to get better. And even when you feel like little niggles or little like, you know, like you start getting pain somewhere, I can generally get on top of it pretty quickly. I still see, you know, a physio, like I've got my own team that deals with my body, but it definitely helps to have a good understanding. Even when they're explaining what they're doing and what's going on, I can like resonate with it a lot easier than probably I would be able to if I didn't have that knowledge.
Yeah. And so then you actually start doing the open, and your improvement from 2018 to 2021 was significant, from 1,042nd in Australia, your first year, all the way to third. And you went from 1,042 to 104 to 26 to 3.
Yes.
And so how much confidence did that give you that every year you saw that improvement moving toward your goal?
To be honest, I always just can't believe it. I always think, I'm like, wow, like I must have just had a good workout, or they must have stuffed up. Like I still can't get my head around the fact that, you know, that I did well in the open and I made the games. Like I always second guess myself, which is something that, you know, I'm definitely working on now. And I think as well, going from a year of nothing, so the year of, you know, COVID 2020, not even like just training in my garage and not having anyone around. I'd had no idea where I stacked up. So going into the 2021 Open was pretty scary. You know, I decided not to work as a physio. I decided to, you know, take on CrossFit as my career. So I didn't know if it was going to pay off. I had no idea. So that was definitely pretty nerve-wracking going into that Open. And then coming third in Australia was, it was a relief, because, you know, you see the hard work has paid off in the long run, but you never quite feel comfortable. You always feel like there's someone that's coming up that's going to take your spot. So as relieving as it was to come third, I never felt like it was like a given, you know?
Yeah. And the Open doesn't punch your ticket to anything. It's just a leaderboard that you kind of get to look at and see where you stand, but you still have to go through quarterfinals and semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
But you did really well there as well. But then you go to the Taurian Pro for semis. And like you said, you'd only really done one big competition before that. And here you are. And in Australia, that's a big event.
Yeah.
Like Taurian is famous. Then they add that as a semi, and you were there in front of all these people. And that's where you have to make it pay off.
Yeah. I have to give credit to the Australian and New Zealand community. I think because we don't have many competitions there, when we do have one, the community just get around it, and it's like the atmosphere was just incredible. Like they do it so well.
Yeah. So what was that weekend like at the Taurian Pro? You know, CrossFit kind of did Australia dirty by taking their number of game spots from 5 to 3, which there's been a lot of debate about that since that has happened, that is unjust. And really, from the quality of athletes that come out of that area, that's too low of a number. So now you're down to 3 spots to get into the games, and you're in the same region as Tia and Cara, and a stacked full field of great women athletes.
Yeah, I think I might be biased, but I do think our caliber of athletes is incredible, and we are a little bit gypped to only get 3 spots, but that's also completely out of my control. So I think I didn't expect to get a qualifying position, but I also didn't rule myself out. I knew going in I was going to have to fight really hard and just give my best effort in all of the workouts. And if that was enough, that was going to be amazing. And if not, I just had to move on and focus on the next season. But yeah, knowing that our spots are very limited and we've got such amazing athletes down there, it was tough. Thankfully, Tia took one of the American spots. So thanks, Tia. Opened up one more for us, which was great. But yeah, I think it was challenging last year, and it's going to be just as challenging in all the years to come, because we've got such great talent down there, especially coming through. You speak of Tia, Cara, and Jamie Simmons is down there as well. But there's just as many other girls trying to make their mark as well that are coming through, that are like incredible athletes as well.
Yeah. So you make it to the games. You finished third at Taurian. Was your family able to be there and share it with you?
They came to Taurian, which was incredible. I had such a good support crew. Quite a few friends from the gym that I train and work at came as well. And then unfortunately, because of pricing and travel and restrictions and quarantines, they weren't able to come to the games. But yeah, I think one of the things that I can be so grateful for is my support crew, and just the amount that I receive over message. And every night I'd get back to my phone and it would just be flooded full of support, no matter if I did well or if I didn't do well. They're proud of me no matter what. So knowing that was great. But yeah, obviously it would have been so nice to have them at the games, but it just wasn't feasible.
Has
So-
anybody else in your family followed suit and joined CrossFit or jumped on that bandwagon?
No, not really. My brothers do participate in some form of CrossFit. They are both they play AFL, which is Australian rules football. So they do like dabble in it, but it's not their. Then they're not going to compete. They just do it to keep fit and try allow me not to beat them by too much.
So Australians are known for their celebrations.
Mhm.
So after Taurian, what did you do to celebrate your games ticket?
I went and had a chicken palmy, which, well, I wanted to have one after the games as well, but I did not realize that your chicken palmy is not an Australian chicken palmy. Like our chicken palmies are like chicken schnitzel with like tomato sauce and cheese. It's like a pub meal, and then with chips, or like I think you call them French fries. Whereas I came over, I wanted to get a chicken palmy, and Michelle, my coach, was like, showed me a picture, and it was on pasta. I was like, "What is this? Crazy!"
So we have the version, the Australian version.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, like you can get it as a sub or a sandwich. Is that what you're talking about? Like
No,
on
no,
bread?
it's just like it's just on like, it's just a chicken schnitzel with chips.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't the same over here. So, but after Taurian, I had a chicken palmy, which was amazing. It's like my favorite. And then I just spent time with family. I went to a place called Byron Bay, which is a beautiful town near where we compete, and just relaxed for a few days and tried to soak in like that I'd literally just achieved my lifelong goal. So yeah, it was a pretty incredible time.
So then you get to the games. It's your rookie season, your first time there. And as you mentioned, your family couldn't come. So you were kind of there on your own, and it's your first experience. What was that like?
It started off pretty stressful. I hate traveling. I hate flying. So the trip over was just a pretty anxiety provoking experience for me. And then I get into America and I get taken into Homeland Security. So that was literally the scariest moment of my life. They took my phone and my passport, and they were potentially not going to let me in. But then I got through that, made it to my hotel eventually after, I think it was close to like 35, 40 hours of travel all by myself for the first time in the States. And then the lead up, I had a couple of injuries that were not ideal. I couldn't really train properly. So the whole experience before the games was fairly stressful, and I think it took away, I tried to not let it, but I think it did take away from the whole experience a little bit. And then, not being able to celebrate it with your family and friends is also hard. Just, you compete for the day and then you go back to your hotel room and you just by yourself, and it feels a little bit surreal. But in saying that, like, it was still just an incredible experience to be around the people that you'd watched and admired for so long. Yeah, it was just crazy. I tried to take it all in, but it's quite overwhelming when you've had an idea of something for so long and then you're actually living it. It was crazy.
So did you finally feel comfortable when they put an echo bike on the floor?
Yeah.
And let you go to town?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really know that I was good at echo biking or good at those sorts of workouts until that moment, or like I hadn't really tested myself in that situation. I'd done it in the gym, but I trained by myself, so I'm comparing against my times. So when they put it out there. I was like, well, I know I can push myself and go hard. So this is the time to do it. And yeah, it paid off, which was great.
Yeah. So then you finished 26th. And that's when I met you. And that is when kind of the wheels came off the Ellie Turner train. And you had got a call that they had canceled your flights back to Australia. So kind of walk us through what happened at that point.
They hadn't cancelled the flight. So what was happening is the Australian government were only letting a certain amount of international travellers in per week or per day or something of that extent. So it was, I think the plane was only allowed 16 people on there. And there was a massive wait list to get back into Australia. So we were sort of kept getting bumped off our flights. They weren't getting cancelled. They were still operating, but because of COVID, we weren't allowed back in because they needed a certain amount of hotel beds back in Australia. So we eventually got on a flight back. I was with two of the other Aussies, Jay and Maddie. And when we got there, police escorted to a hotel where we stayed for 2 weeks. And you had to stay in the place that you arrived. So we arrived in Sydney because that was the only place that was taking international travellers at that time. But I'm from Adelaide in South Australia, so another state. So I did my 2 weeks hotel quarantine in Sydney. But because the borders were shut between states, when I flew back to Adelaide, I had to do another 2 weeks because technically I was in Sydney out, and even though I was in a hotel and I hadn't had contact with anyone, I was just treated as if I was just a member of the public. So that was a long and painful experience. And before I did it, I knew that I was going to have to do the 2 weeks in a hotel, and I accepted that. But then when I found out I was going to have to do another 2 weeks, it just like ruined me.
Yeah, I'm sure it crushed your spirit. I mean, just that's a mental game in its own. I mean, just doing that by yourself, I can't imagine having to do it
no
twice.
fresh air, like no kitchen facility, so you can't cook your own food. I'm very like routine and structured, and it was just, very outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, I just spent 10 days quarantined in my house with my family, and it was horrible. Like depression set in. You know, you just want to get out and see something other than the four walls around you.
Yeah,
so
it's quite rough.
You get through that. And then how long did it take you to get back into training? Were you jonesing to get back after being in a hotel for 4 weeks?
I was doing bits and pieces in the hotel, but mostly just to kill time and to keep myself somewhat sane. So then after, when I got out of all the quarantines, I was keen to go back and see just my friends at the gym and do a few like class workouts. But to be honest, like the quarantine had more of an effect on my mental health than what I first thought it would. So I wasn't really in the headspace to push myself or to make myself train or to do any of that. And I struggled with that for quite a while. And it probably just set me off on the back foot. So then when I did get back into training and trying to push myself, I just wasn't in the right headspace.
And then I know as well that you wanted to come early to the States before Wodapalooza, and that even got messed up with COVID and flights. So you have had like the worst travel experiences in the last year of anybody that I know.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's definitely tested my resilience. But I think everyone's going through their own fair share of COVID drama in one form or of another. So, I mean, I can't complain. I can't, like, everyone's in a shitty situation. So, it didn't go as smoothly as what I would have liked, but I got here in the end, and that's all that really matters.
So your coach is Michelle Laton.
Mhm.
When I talked to you at the games, that was the first time you had met her
Mhm.
in person, and she had been coaching you for a while. So
Yeah.
I want you to talk about the relationship that the two of you have and why Michelle is the best choice as your coach.
We have a great relationship. We get along really well, which, you know, lucky considering that we met for the first time in Madison. But I've been with her since like June of 2020. So we'd chatted we almost chat every day, I'd say, at least on message. And then we'd done quite a few phone calls and FaceTimes and things like that. So we had a rough idea of each other before meeting in person. But I think Michelle's just great because, you know, she's obviously a past games athlete. And that's not a make or break for a coach. But I think for me personally, when I have had, you know, self-doubts and feelings after events, she's like majority of the time been through something very similar. So she knows where you're coming from and how you're feeling. And she can help, you know, talk to you about it and reason it with you and work through it. So in that sense, it's been great. But I just love, you know, how she goes about her programming, and she's very smart, and she's got our best interests at heart. So like I've just felt so comfortable and I trust her completely. So it's been such a great fit.
So you made the decision to move from Australia to Montreal to be closer to Michelle and train with her. Now, I saw on Instagram that you did the yearly thing that we get to do, and that's the shopping cart sled push through the snow.
Yeah.
So how rough has it been going from Australia to Montreal in the middle of winter? You've been there a week, so how's it been?
Yeah, it's actually been really good. I was fairly scared, especially knowing that it was like negative 30 degrees at some points. Like that's just unheard of. So I was nervous that I wasn't going to like it and that it was going to affect, you know, my training and things like that. But I've loved it so far. Like I keep saying, in Australia, we don't dress for winter. None of our buildings are heated very well because we don't need to. So when you come here, you know, you dress properly, and all the buildings are well insulated and heated. So I'm less cold here in like negative 20 degrees than what I am in Australian winter when it's like 10 degrees. And at least they get some cool stuff out of it, like snow. It's pretty cool. Whereas in Australia, we just get wind and rain. So I think it's pretty cool.
So what's it like having Michelle close and on the daily getting instant feedback on everything that you're working on?
Oh, it's amazing. I think after experiencing it at the games for a little bit, you know, like the week or so before the games, I obviously got to train with her, and I couldn't believe that people were getting this all the time. Like it was just a no-brainer for me. It was just a massive advantage that I knew that I could make happen. It was going to be uncomfortable at the start. You know, change is always scary, and stepping outside your comfort zone, but it's probably where the most growth happens. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what changes and how it can impact my season going forward.
Yeah, that's got to be a real game changer, that you get that instant feedback every day, and you're not waiting for like to send a video and get feedback or whatever, and you can fix it in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've never been in-person coach like that before. So there's obviously things that need to be worked on that she can help me with. And I think for me, that was a necessary step to happen in order to get to where I want to go to in the future.
So have you guys sat down and thought about what your goals are for the 2022 season?
roughly, I think we have, without sitting down and chatting on all the specifics, we definitely have a good understanding of where I want to get to. I mean, I do that personally, and Michelle knows my goals. So, yeah, I have no doubt that she'll help me get there.
And you're just 23 years old, for
Yeah.
our listeners. So you are just entering the prime of that typical CrossFit age for success. How excited are you for the next couple seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. I have to pinch myself all the time that this is my life. Like, you know, you dream of it, you imagine it, but you never really think it's going to happen. So for it to all, you know, for me to actually be living my dream is just crazy.
So you're going to be in Montreal up through the open and quarters, and then you'll have to go back to Australia for the semis, correct?
Yes, I think, so yeah, I haven't moved here completely. I'm just here for a bit of training and to do the open and quarters with Michelle. And then I think the ruling is still, for semis, still based on citizenship. So I'll have to go back to Taurian to compete, and then all going to plan, you know, making the games, and I'll come back over and do a bit of games prep with Michelle.
Well, that sounds so exciting. I'm so glad you joined us. It was so fun watching you at Wodapalooza kind of hit the stage, and there were people around me going, "Who is that?" I'm like, "You don't know who that is?" Like I met her at the games.
Yeah.
And she's pretty awesome. So it was really cool kind of seeing your coming out party. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen now that you do get that immediate coaching for this season.
And I hope your travel goes much smoother.
Yeah, definitely better travel this year.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ellie. And we'll let you get back to your Sunday and probably rest day today, right?
Yes, rest day today.
Yeah, good.
Favorite day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.